Alright, so it's Dan with CLV Boost here, and we're going to do a brief walkthrough of how to go about an outbound email campaign using Tout app. Lots of tools, maybe even at the time of this recording there will be more out there, but Tout app, yes, where there's a number of tools that we can select from, and today we're going to talk about how to conduct an outbound campaign from Tout. First steps first, what we're going to need to do is get ourselves an external email list. Preferably an email list that we've collected manually, that we've had manually opt in, not an email list that we've purchased, but one that we've either gathered one by one or hired someone on Odesk to gather one by one, as we often do here, or one that we've had manually opt in ourselves. Regardless, what I'll go about doing is as follows. I will go into relationships, and what I can do is I can add a group. Now, when I add a group, what I'm able to do is I'm able to import folks through a CSV file into my Tout app account. Now, when you go about doing this, it's very important that you do it per their criterion. So you're going to download one of their example CSV files, and they have the sort of canonical naming of the top row of your CSV file that you need yours to have. And if you're inside of Excel, or if you have a Apple computer and you have numbers, you will be able to export from numbers or Excel into a CSV, but you need to make sure that your document is titled just the way that theirs is. So you're going to click here, then you're going to upload your own CSV. Now once that happens, you can have a number of different lists, and as you can see, I have a number of lists broken up into 200 person clumps, so to speak, and we'll talk about that in just a second. If I first go to FII non-buyers, in this case this means first internet income. We run a business in the internet marketing space by that name, and so I've abbreviated with FII. I've taken these folks and by highlighting 200 of them at a time, so I've uploaded in this document a 734 person CSV file. Now I've selected 100, I've gone to the next page, and I've selected, takes a bit to load sometimes, 200, at which point I will click this little arrow, go add people to group. Now once I do that, I need to have these little subgroups already made. These are 200 person subgroups. Okay, this is our methodology for split testing subject lines. You don't have to do this in Tout. This is a way that we go about doing it so that we can split test subject lines. So as I'm here, I'm going to again go add people to group, and then I'm going to manually add them into these groups. As you can see, I've already filled up my 200 person clumps, so to speak, and I'm going to be creating more of those as I move along. But regardless, once I've done that, I've taken the core list I'm looking to work with, the more the better, and I've broken it up into a number of 200 person clumps by simply clicking and then going to the next page and then clicking, which will give me 200 people. And we want to do 200, maybe 203. I really don't like to break 200. Generally speaking, if you're sending from a Gmail account, you can only do 500 outbound emails per day. Okay, so if you have, if we're split testing a subject line, we need to send it at least twice, and that means that'll be at least 200 a pop. Now you might say, well, we have another 100 emails, but if this is an email account that you use on a regular basis, such as some of the ones that we use from Tout, then you don't want to cap out your Gmail. You want to give yourself plenty of leeway. For me, that's 100 emails in a given day, and at the same time, I'll send out another 200 and another 200 to be 400 total from Tout, and then I'll give myself another 100. Okay, this is just sort of how email deliverability works. You run into these problems the hard way when you're working in email marketing, and we've certainly done that once or twice. So luckily, you don't have to do that, and you can just sort of follow directions here and make sure you go by the books. So as we do that, we're going to go into templates, all right? And templates, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create, anytime I have an outbound campaign. So if I have an outbound email campaign, this is Science of Skill, David versus Goliath, 3 back attacks, sequence 1A. Okay, this is just how I've canonically named this email. Do you, by any means, have to abbreviate or title things the way I do? No. Is it useful for me? Sure. And you're going to be able to glean some lessons here and find some ways that you could do it for yourself. I like the 1A, 1B. I think that in general that works. You can abbreviate the rest of whatever you have in whatever way you like. So this is an email that comes from Timothy, who works with me full-time here in marketing, and it's promoting one of our Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu courses. 1B is the exact same message, just with a different subject line. Okay, this is because I believe that subject line in general is the first thing to test because it is the largest needle to move, so to speak. In general, the subject line will yield the highest results. It's not necessarily always the case, but it's certainly a very low effort way of making a big difference in terms of response. So I have a 1A and I have a 1B. Now, as you'll notice, my 1A template, as it's been constructed, and it's very easy to make a template. You just click Add New Template. Zero rocket science degrees required. You just kind of click it. Once that's done, I make sure that this individual email sequence, or that this individual email toggles out a follow-up email in a campaign. So if I go ahead and edit this, I will see that. Yeah, so I can see automatically what the follow-up is for this email. So in general, if I'm going with, in this particular case, my Science of Skill emails, Science of Skill 1B will be followed by 2B, will be followed by 3B, and 4B. And for me, this is a 4-email campaign. So when you determine an outbound campaign and tout 3 or 4 emails, you determine how long you want to space them out. At which point, I'll go to, this 1B email of mine here will be followed by 2B in 1 day, and this will be ended if the person replies. That's relatively simple. Bada bing. And the same thing with 1A. Okay, if they weren't already this way for my given example here with our business, I'll sort of explain sort of how that would work. So here, replies, bam. So what we do now is we would go back to relationships. I would go to my 200 clump, and I would say email entire group. And then I would email the entire group once it loads. Tout is not always rocket speed. I will email entire group, whatever template I please. Now, if that template has an automatic follow-up template, then within 24 hours, 48 hours, however many days later, they're going to be hit with the next email. So let's talk a little bit of strategy, okay? There's nothing for me to really show. I'm just going to speak. Basically, what I need to determine is how many days apart are these campaigns spread. So for my martial arts offers, and this is just one example of an e-commerce business that we run here, I have a 4-email campaign that goes off 1, 2, 3, 4 every single day for 4 days, okay? So I'm going to send out 400, 400, 400, 400. And those are all going to be split tested by 200 each by subject line, okay? And I can do that with a whole bunch of different 200-person groups. I don't only have to work on 400 people. I can work on as many as I'd please. I can just only send out so many emails from one account. So that needs to be kind of something you bear in mind. So in 4 days later, or 5 days later, I can restart the same process with a new 400 people. Another 4 days later with a new 400 people, and so forth. Once I do that 5 times, what I've done is I've run the entire campaign. Email 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, 4A, 3B, 4A, 4B, across 1,000 people. And now that's going to give me relatively accurate information with respect to which subject line is my winner. Okay, so if I do that 5 times, each one of those subject lines has been exposed to 1,000 people, so long as I'm working with 200-person clumps. All right, so if you have a campaign that you want to be spread out once per week, then you can launch it on a Monday, and you can say, okay, this email, and as you saw before, I can trigger what is the next template that gets kicked off. I can say this next template, 2B after 1B, gets kicked off in 7 days, so long as the person doesn't reply. And I can do that for 3 or 4 weeks. In my first internet income business, which is more of a coaching and consulting business that we run, I will have those get spread out every 3 to 4 days. So those are a little bit longer of a spread. But regardless, what I need to do, just to reiterate our steps, is upload my lists, name them appropriately, break them up into 200 clumps. Okay? They have to be the same kind of contact. I don't want this 200 to be buyers and this 200 to be non-buyers. Your segmentation should already be done. Your 200 clumps are clumps of the exact same type of human, type of lead, type of prospect. At which point you're going to build your templates. You're going to have your 1A, your 1B, your 2A, your 2B, however long you want that sequence to be. It could be an 8-email sequence. Generally, I work with 3 or 4 email sequences, and I work with a lot of different sequences, okay? I don't just make one and let it run for a month. I like to run a bunch and figure out what works, because often return on investment is sort of what clients pay me for, and so I need to do a lot of testing. And so that's what I'm teaching you to do. So you can spread them out over every day, once a week, a couple times a week, etc. And that will allow you to build out, again, once you have your own templates there, you go back into relationships, email to entire group for this 200, email entire group for this 200, and then because the triggers are set to kick off automatically, 1A will be followed by 2A in however many days later. So you can essentially set it and forget it for 2 weeks, set it and forget it for 4 days, however long your campaign lasts, go back, check your stats, and then unfortunately in Tout, at least at the time of this recording, you do have to manually count up how many people replied, how many people opted out, how many people bounced. You do have to manually count that, but luckily it's very high return on investment calculations, okay? You can have an intern do it, you can have somebody, you know, some relatively untrained folks can sort of do that job, but that job of the manual tracking and tagging and following through of how your campaign's performed is a very, very important gig. If I just look at, for example, some emails that we've delivered here not all that long ago. So, okay, so, you know, here's some emails that we sent out. So you can see which ones were viewed. You know, I can see which ones were clicked. These weren't sent out all that long ago. Actually, yeah, this was sent out 12 minutes ago, so not too many responses. But after about a week, I call the stats complete after 7 days. So I look at how many clicks, how many replies, and I see which subject line got me the most replies. And then ultimately, if those are phone sales, I can see which subject line got me the most phone sales. And that's how we roll out a Tout campaign. Okay, so we're going to hop them into this program. We're going to break them up by the different clumps. We're going to create our automatically triggering templates that are automatically split by subject line, and we're going to manually apply those to groups, and we're going to let them run. And then we count the stats, we track the stats, we keep our winners, and we test them against new email subject lines or new email body copy, and we see if that might be able to beat our old winners. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful for everybody. If you need to run a Tout campaign, this is the fundamentals. A lot of people very much underestimate how versatile Tout can really be. Tremendously useful tool in a number of different businesses, and I hope this has been useful for everybody on the line today. All right, so here we're going to take a look at how to track your statistics from Tout. Now, I wish I could say that Tout, at the time of this recording, has some amazing functionality that could give you the open and click-through rate of the various emails you send. The unfortunate fact of the matter is that that is not the case. The good news is it's actually not all that complicated to figure out the general opened and clicked-through rate. Now, I will tell you, Tout statistics are not 100% accurate. As you get farther and farther into this world of business, you realize that business information is actually more and more difficult to attain. Tout is no exception, but the thing is, it's not necessarily their fault. Tracking opens and clicks and emails has a lot of its own conundrums when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, but Tout will, in fact, give you a rather clear image of sort of the general gist. It will give you statistically significant information, if you do it correctly, to tell you which one of your subject lines actually works, as opposed to which ones don't. So we'll begin here by looking at one of our messages, and we'll look at the viewed and clicked-through rates of this particular message, at which point afterwards, were this an actual broadcast I was split testing, which I am, but I don't have to go through all of my templates today for you to get the general gist here. There's far too many of them, as you can see from my numbers. The idea is we're going to look at the clicked-through, or the open and click-through rates of our various emails, as well as the reply rates, just to be able to take those into account. Some of those will be replies of people that request to get off your list. Some of those will be replies of folks who have questions about your product or maybe interested in buying. If you're doing more B2B, kind of inviting them to an appointment, then they might actually be replying to actually get to an appointment. So a reply is not necessarily good or bad, but an open and a click is what we'll look at least in this particular example. Okay, this happens to be an e-commerce example, so we'll look through this first. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to scroll down. I have a number of pages of this one template called Ends Today, 3 back attack DVDs, yada yada. Okay, this is in the jiu-jitsu niche. So we had sent this out in the jiu-jitsu niche. So what I have to do in this particular example is I have to count up the number of viewed and the number of clicked little green bricks on the side here. Okay, I unfortunately have to count them up manually, but Very luckily, that's not rocket science, okay? It's rather easy to do that. So I believe there were 200 of these that were sent out on this one day, November 4th. I asked that we give, in a real example, that we give a template 7 days before we go back and check its statistics, and I will tell you to do exactly the same. Okay, be wary that your stats the next day are not 100% accurate. Even 7 days later are not 100% accurate, but you can count on 98% of the people that are ever going to see that email, maybe 99, having viewed it within 7. Okay, so I generally say 7 days before we go back and check the stats. So for this example, we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and we have 2 clicked. So 16 open, 2 click, 16 and 2. I'm writing 16 and 2 on a little piece of paper next to me. You can tell how archaic this is in some respects, but this is how we track our stats with Tout. I get to the top here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 more opens, no more clicks. Okay, we'll move along. And again, I believe this was sent to something like 400 people or so. 200, this particular template. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Okay, so there was 26 there. And I think we had 1 clicked. And if we move along, this should be the end of this template, I believe. Or maybe there's a few more here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 9, 13. So we have 13 more viewed and no more clicked, it looks like, for this particular template. And here on the next page, yeah, we have a few more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1. 6 and 1. So what I'm doing now is I'll add up 16, 9, 26, 13 and 6, and then I'll add up 2, 1, and 1, which is 4. And I'll get my number of clicks and my number of opens. Now, knowing that I had sent out, I believe, exactly 207 of these messages, I will be able to say, okay, here's my viewed rate, here's my clicked-through rate. I'll do the same thing for my split-tested template, and I'll see if I can see a drastic change. What I ask my clients to do is, instead of sending only to groups of 200, which is normally what you have to do if you're sending through Google, is to send that 200 to another, is to send that same split-tested messaging to another group of 200, to another group of 200, and to another group of 200. So the ideal here is for us to have 800 to 1,000 people see message A and 800 to 1,000 people see message B, which will really give us much more statistically significant information around which groups are more relevant, or which message gets the best response. So you've seen how I've done this with one template. You can imagine how you would do that with a split-tested template. And as I said before, I really prefer to split-test a subject line sent out to a total per subject line of 800 to 1,000 people rather than just 200. 200 might give you a little bit of, might give you confidence in a message that really isn't necessarily better. We really want more volume. But I've showed you how to do it with one message, and all you do is scale that same process. Count them right up, figure out your results, tally them up, and then determine which one of your control messages was the winner. So this is how we calibrate our results from Tout.